What's up, everybody? Welcome into the latest of the Blitz Network Radio. With you here, as always, is TBN Editor-in-Chief Robert Zaglinski, and today we're going to preview the Bears matchup with the Bills on Sunday. Another winnable game on paper for Chicago following their win over the Jets this past weekend. Maybe another week where Khalil Mack won't play because the Bears feel they can win without him. We'll see. To help preview the matchup, I've brought in Cover One's Greg Tompsett, who you can follow on Twitter at Greg Tompsett. That's at Greg, common spelling, Tompsett, at Greg Tompsett. Give him a follow. The man does great work. He's a podcast host for Cover One, part of Bill's Mafia, and generally a good dude because this is definitely the first time we've had this conversation. Greg, how are you?
Not too bad, man. Looking forward to talking about the matchup upcoming here and keep things rolling.
Greg, I want to lead off with the, to put it lightly, historically bad offense. You can't really gloss over that, and you can't say that there's not really a way to say that any worse. The historically bad Bills offense. In a league where there's quarterbacks that have, there are 23 quarterbacks that have a passer rating over 90, where seemingly the entire league is producing points and yardage unlike ever before. The Bills have the worst offense in modern football history. What's the deal here?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues going around. I mean, obviously, there's just plain and simple poor quarterback play. I think that we've seen overall, I think Bills Mafia and the fan base in general is supportive and believes in Sean McDermott and Brian Beane. Obviously, breaking the playoff drought last year was encouraging. But the one area that, to a man, any fan or even the most Kool-Aid drinking of those among us, they bungled the quarterback position. They were lulled into a false sense of security by Nathan Peterman. He did have the best rating in the NFL in the preseason, but obviously is one of those guys that you just can't trust in live bullets, in live action. And he's a guy that is going to crumble when the real pressure is coming and when the defense is trying to disguise things and can only look good in those controlled, limited environments. So being in a position where they got lulled into a false sense of security there that allowed them to trade away A.J. McCarron, who probably wasn't much better, but may have at least been passable. And like you touched on, no time in modern history has there been an easier time to look functional as a passing offense. The Bills have been not only below average, but historically bad. And compared to the rest of the league, potentially the worst in NFL history. So being in that position, I joked the last time we spoke that I think I'm the only person in recorded history to ever say, man, I'm really relieved that Derek Anderson is our starting quarterback. And now I'm compounding that and doubling down. And the first person who's ever said, oh man, what are we going to do without Derek Anderson? And that's just a depressing feeling.
I think I told you too, and you showed, and you finally saw it today, the Nathan Peterman highlight video with the cheesy electric techno music and like the 5 highlights of his entire career, which are literally the 5 highlights of his entire career, like a college prospect that you're watching during draft season, and they can only pick out 5 plays to choose from, and it's like a 2 or 3 minute video. Like that's what Nathan Peterman is to me on paper, and it seems like that bears out. I feel I empathize with you, obviously, on the Derek Anderson point, because for obviously the Bears don't have the best quarterback history themselves. I mean, Mr. Trubisky's the most competent they've probably ever had in a long time. A guy that maybe we're not sure what he's going to be yet, but he's certainly not Jay Cutler. He's certainly not Rex Grossman. But, we've previously had our, ironically, Matt Barkley, who is in Buffalo now. We've had our Kyle Ortons. We've had our Craig Krenzels and Chad Hutchinsons and all of those. So I empathize with you, Greg. I empathize.
Yeah, it's an interesting position because, like I said, I'm a diehard fan. I was born and raised in Buffalo. I live down south now, but I'm never gonna change that. So I'm always an optimistic sort. I'm always looking for, okay, he's with us now. What are we gonna do? So going into draft season, I wasn't a huge Josh Allen fan. I was one of those people. I'm not joking. Literally on my knees as they traded up on my living room floor, saying, please pick the other Josh. Please say Rosen. Please say Rosen. Please say Rosen. And so then they pick Josh Allen. And like any true fan, I'm now going to say, okay, he's ours.
Rationalizing.
What do we need to do to make this functional? And I will say, there has been reason for hope. You joked about that Trubisky isn't Cutler. There's a real possibility that Josh Allen is, hey, what would Jay Cutler be if he was a nice guy that worked hard?
Okay.
And I think that that's a fair comp in that the arm talent is very real. The reading the field, the touch on the short passes, every once in a while having those, WTF kind of throws. But then he'll also have some of those throws you're like, oh my gosh, how did he get that in there? That's unbelievable. So there have been more reasons for hope than I expected as someone who wasn't a big fan of his, but the bungling of the situation and not having that bridge guy, he absolutely should have gotten the Patrick Mahomes treatment and sat the entire year, maybe a couple games at the end of the year. If we had that competent guy and maybe we're in a better cap situation and they were able to keep Tyrod Taylor, and although they got good compensation for him, he basically got us Tremaine Edmonds. Being able to do that would have put us in a different position, but now you can't unring that bell. We trade away AJ McCarron. We don't bring in a veteran quarterback immediately. We let Josh Allen play before he was ready. He showed many of those early concerns that fans had and draft experts had. He did show maybe a little more promise than some who had, I think some people tried to say that he was definitively absolutely a bust versus maybe had the highest probability to bust. And I think he's shown that he has a great humble approach, open to coaching, and has some promise moving forward. But instead, we ended up with a backup quarterback who's statistically the worst quarterback in NFL history, a veteran journeyman who came in 5 weeks into the year who was only there to be a mentor and wasn't supposed to play, or a rookie quarterback who is raw and far too early to be able to play. And all of those are a terrible option. So it's all lesser of evils.
You mentioned the Mahomes comparison and sitting him for a year before letting him get ready. Obviously, Mahomes was another really raw guy with a lot of talent. Do you think the Bills have the similar kind of support system? Do you think they'll have that ready in 2019 the way the Chiefs did with Andy Reid and everybody else? And then now Mahomes is, it's obviously going to be a lot to ask Josh Allen to be playing like an MVP candidate next year, but making a considerable step up the way Mahomes has in Kansas City after being on the bench for a while.
That's certainly an unreasonable level.
Right.
There's a mixture. You look at Jared Goff at the end of his rookie year was not far off of what I said of Nathan Peterman, and some people had made the case the worst rookie season in NFL history. Sean McVay's not walking through that door, so we're not going to get that level of upgrade.
He's going to be the Browns coach. Didn't you see that?
I heard that's bonkers. They have him listed as that. I get it. He's from Dayton. He went to Miami of Ohio, but no one is leaving that setup in LA. That's bonkers. But anyways, he's not walking through Buffalo's door either. We're not going to have that. I think that the model you saw in Chicago is not far off. It was a pretty ugly crowd around Trubisky last year. You guys brought in 3 legitimate weapons to join from a passing standpoint. You saw some similar steps in Philadelphia in Wentz's second year, bringing in multiple people, Alshon Jeffrey and the like. There's probably not a dissimilar situation in Tennessee. All the first-round picks and additions afterwards have been offensive weapons around Mariota. I think that's what you're going to see. Now, the level of success is going to be relative to Josh Allen and what he ends up being as a prospect. But the fact that they have 10 draft picks next year, all of our own, which are clearly going to be high picks in each round, and 90 million in cap space, they at least are set up to give it a swag and to be able to go through and bring in that level of talent. I'm not going to be silly and say that you're going to see a Mahomes level stat, but maybe that second year of Jared Goff isn't crazy. Maybe this second year of Trubisky isn't crazy. If things hit, I think that's what they're targeting: 2 to 3 new linemen, 2 to 3 new receivers, maybe a new tight end. You bring in that kind of NFL level talent, a lot of things can happen.
This leads into my question, Greg. If you're Matt Nagy and you're the Bears coaching staff, could you get away with resting Khalil Mack against this poor Bills offense for another week?
There's no chance I would play him. I think until the Bills prove otherwise, I'll rattle off the last 5 games, the points scored we've had. It's 0, 13, 13, 5, and 6.
You poor soul.
Oh, it's depressing. It's rough. Now, we'll get to the other side of the ball. There is some entertainment in watching the Bills play, but the offensive side it's as bad as anyone's heard. I'm sure that Monday night game was the first time most fans saw the Bills, and the offense is as advertised. It's as bad as everyone has told you. There's a reason it's never on the Red Zone channel. There's a reason it's never in primetime. If I'm the Bears coaches, you guys already had a pretty talented roster, and you brought in a huge, magnifier of that with a guy of the premier talent of Khalil Mack. I would assume that the rest of your defense can put in the effort to keep them at bay. And unless I was 100% sure that he was ready, or maybe you want to give him a ramp up kind of game where he can play 15 to 20 high leverage, 3rd and long red zone snaps just to kind of ease him back in. Maybe that's something you do, but a full slate of plays, I would certainly avoid it if I was them.
Well, you can't be on the Red Zone channel if you're not scoring touchdowns, Greg. I think that's
is that a requirement? Do you have to be in the Red Zone to be on the Red Zone channel?
Yeah, I think that might be it. Yeah. Yeah, and with Mac's case, I think you're probably right. They have, the Bills are obviously, it's an important win you have to get. It's going to likely factor into eventual playoff positioning, but the Bears have 3 straight games in 11 days after visiting Buffalo this Sunday, all against divisional opponents. They need Mac to be the Thanos that he was in September. They need him to be the planet wrecker and be fully healthy and have all his wheels ready to go. If they can't, and again, just honesty. If they can't shut down Buffalo's offense without him, they don't deserve to be a playoff contender. I think that's a fair estimation.
For your defense versus our offense, absolutely. I think that's any competent defense that thinks they're going to go into the playoffs and shut down New Orleans, shut down LA, or maybe not shut down, compete with New Orleans and compete with LA, you better be able to shut down the Bills offense without Khalil Mack.
Let's get into the matchups, Greg. I'm talking with Greg Tompsett of Cover One. You can follow him on Twitter at Gregory Tompsett. That's Tompsett. Follow us on Twitter at The Blitznet and follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski. First up is that Bears defense versus offensive matchup. If the Bills can get anything going, potentially, there's always the chance for an upset, or maybe the Bears defense does look down on them. What does the Bears defense have to focus on, and what could hurt them?
So in the current NFL, the games that we've had that have been a positive game script, where they've gotten an early lead, been competitive early on, the Bills do have an NFL caliber running game. They have LaShawn McCoy and Chris Ivory. Long term, maybe that's not what I would have liked to have 2 30-year-olds there, but in a one-game vacuum, when they're both healthy, which they are right now, they are a legitimate thunder and lightning combo that, Ivory hits like a hammer, like he always has. Shady shakes and bakes and is able to juke people, just like he always has. And there have been very few games where they've been able to get that rolling, but that is the only legitimate, playmakers that the Bills have on offense. So if I'm coming in and I'm looking to say, how do we shut down this Bills offense and make sure we don't give them any false confidence, make sure we don't let them get anything going, it's going to be stacking the box beyond 8, sometimes 9 in the box. You're going to put single coverage out there and dare people to beat you. And obviously with guys right now, it does sound like Derek Anderson he is in concussion protocol. That's tough for a quarterback to even get cleared on a Saturday and come in when you haven't gotten all the reps during the week. So it sounds like right now Nathan Peterman is going to be the starting quarterback. They've officially signed Matt Barkley. That's not going to scare anyone. They did bring in Terrell Pryor. I guess that's better than Andre Holmes out
Probably
there.
The best quarterback on the roster.
It's so depressing that I can't argue with that. It's something that, okay, maybe that's a little something. And now they have guys like Terrell Pryor and Kelvin Benjamin that, if nothing else, can go up and fight for a 50-50 ball. They're both 6'4" and 6'5", big guys. So I guess there's something there. But realistically, if your guys are able to stop the running game, there's just not much else that they're going to get going. They're not going to be able to go single back, 4 wide, 5 wide, and light it up. So that's where all my focus would be. And if you're able to take that away, it really does kind of take away their only card to play.
I assume someone like Zay Jones isn't really a factor, be more because of the quarterback play and not his own individual talent. Yes.
Yes, that's correct. And I will say he's the lone piece, as you talked about on our Cover One Buffalo podcast. We do talk about, my mantra is, who is going to matter on the 2020 Buffalo Bills? And I've now kind of flipped from maybe Zay Jones is just a guy and that's fine, but I don't care, to now I actually think he legitimately can be that modern big slot, the poor man's Larry Fitzgerald kind of thing, that he runs a nice route. He's actually really worked they had a couple plays where on Monday night they had a punt return from Micah Hyde. He brings it down to the 35-yard line. This is, late in the third quarter. It's only 12-6. It's actually a competitive game at this point. They call a great pass play, or great, play call. Brian Daboll actually has been doing okay from that standpoint. Max protect. They pull Zay Jones out of the slot on the left side and kind of a skinny post going across the field, across the far hash mark. He burns his guy out of the slot. They pull up the safety and he's wide open for a touchdown. That's the play that Derek Anderson dropped the snap and fumbled the snap and ended up just getting covered up for a sack. It would have been a touchdown to take the lead 13-12. And I don't have any false hope that they would have pulled an upset there, but it certainly would have been entertaining for the moment. So there's reason to hope that Zay Jones can be a piece there. But beyond that, most Bills fans think we have 3 legitimate NFL players in Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, our left tackle, and Zay Jones. And virtually everyone else has to be replaced or is at best a replacement level player.
That's not undoable, but obviously a lot has to happen over 2 years.
A deep hole to dig out of. A deep hole to dig out of.
Very, very deep hole to dig out of. On the offensive side for the Bears against the Bills defense, I understand that the Bills defense is probably playoff caliber and could be contending right now. Unfortunately, the other side of the ball is what drags down.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's a shame because, especially when you have playmakers like, Kyle Williams has 6 sacks from the defensive tackle slot. You have Lorenzo Alexander playing some outstanding football. Those two are 35 and 33 years old in today's NFL. That's virtually ancient. Lorenzo Alexander has 4.5 sacks. It's just putting guys in a position like that where you're obviously not going to get that kind of performance long term. It's a shame that we're seeing that. Now, there are a lot of young pieces, Tre'Davious White, Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano, a lot of nice young pieces that are going to be part of that core long term. But the Bills have been up and down on defense, not consistent. When they're on, they are arguably the best defense in the NFL. They're right there they've floated in 3rd to 5th to 6th in DVOA on the year, and that's including the 47-3 shellacking in the first game, giving up to the Ravens, giving up 28 in the first half to the Chargers, getting killed by the Colts, 37-5 or whatever scoreigami that was. I think it was the first 37-5 game in NFL history. Getting shellacked in those kind of games, they still have incredible defense. And I think most of the national audience saw that. They held the Patriots to 4 field goals through 3.5 quarters. And until a pick six and an ugly turnover late, that was a very competitive game, 100% from the defense. The offense did absolutely nothing to contribute to that. And they were holding, the greatest quarterback in NFL history to, 4 field goals at that point. So it's something that if they're on, and you saw that the home crowd does make a difference, that's something that I would anticipate Trubisky's going to have to go a lot of silent count, a lot of hand signals. Despite the Bills not being good, the Bills Mafia does show up every week and we do our part. So it's something that I anticipate that being a new challenge, maybe similar to going into a Green Bay, something like that. But it's something that I'm hopeful that's going to be able to keep them in the game and keep it competitive. So it's at least something fun to watch.
You can also take badges of honor when the Patriots send out, and I'm never going to stop referencing this, when the Patriots send out Tom Brady to be a lead blocker and put him in harm's way in front of Lorenzo Alexander. Like, those are the things in a rebuilding season. I'm sure it's like those warm your heart. Or that's why I'm watching.
The slow-mo replay of him getting crumpled on that play is one of my highlights of the night. Matter of fact, the 2 guys I referenced early on, there was a play where Kyle Williams was a split second from sacking him and had pretty much the best hit you're allowed to have in the NFL nowadays. It was right as the ball was coming off his fingertips, so they let Kyle hit him. He crushed him right dead center in the stomach, folded him in half, and was able to come down. He did a good job and posted his arm so he didn't land with all of his weight, but he pretty much got as hard of a hit as you're allowed to get nowadays, and then doubled down on that. Tom Brady was one of those things that, I immediately regret this decision. and went to, I think, kind of, just post up and try to basketball pick Lorenzo Alexander, and he was having none of that and crumpled him backwards. So at least we got a couple positive highlights out of the game.
That's the new that's the NFL's new offensive innovation. Send quarterbacks out on lead blockers. That's why all these guys have such high passer ratings. Really, it's no other great passing schemes. It's sending out one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to get creamed by a good pass rusher just for no reason, literally no reason. Like, makes perfect sense, but still fun to watch.
It's a little crazy.
Greg, so if you're Mitch Trubisky, you kind of just touched on it. How much do you see that Buffalo crowd affecting him on Sunday?
I won't be unrealistic or unreasonable and say that it's, some insurmountable, effect, but it's real. It's as real as any other, high level crowd going into Seattle, going into Arrowhead. So on big third downs, if you're down in one of the end zones, it's really rough. So, but that, they're NFL teams, they practice that, they're prepared for that, that you do have to use the silent count. You do have to use hand signals. So it's something that has an impact. I don't think it's going to, completely throw him off where he can't function. But it's as real as any other location that you're going to see them get in there. I will say, sadly, like any fan base, if the game gets away from them and the Bears are able to score early, it certainly lessens that. And it's not impossible to take the fans out of the game if the game gets out of hand. But if it's competitive, the Bills defense is playing well, they're keeping it close early on, they'll give it their all and have an impact.
I think Trubisky, to his credit, because we won't know how he plays in that environment until Sunday, but to his credit, he's embracing already being in the hostile crowd. Today he said that he wishes Bears fans, or he stopped himself short before fully saying that he wished Bears fans would jump through tables the way Bills fans do. So he's preparing for. He's ready for the atmosphere and the loud noise and getting into his head. I think obviously, again, actions speak louder than words. But anyone listening, please don't jump through tables. That's one fan base's tradition. Let's keep it. Let's keep it to one fan base's tradition. it looks fun, but it's still dangerous. It's still dangerous. Greg, Greg, as far as what Trubisky and the Bears offense will specifically need to focus on against this great Bills defense, how do they find success?
There's a couple things. I think right now, obviously, one main advantage is I'm going to assume that Tremaine Edmonds, our rookie middle linebacker, is going to be out for the game. I know you and I were both big fans of him coming out of the draft. He is that, modern day, marvel of, I won't go as far as to say he's a Brian Urlacher level player, because Urlacher is obviously
same kind of freak, though.
An amazing Hall of Famer. But when you have a guy who's 6'5", 250, runs a 4.5 flat and is flying all over the field, he has that kind of potential if he were to, hit every upper level of his ceiling. And it's been a lot of fun. Now, he is 20 years old. He's a little over aggressive, and you saw him bite on some play action, bite on some run fakes or some counter run fakes. So either way, I don't think that that's going to be a huge change bringing in someone Julian Stanford, whether he's maybe a little bit safer and not as aggressive, but he's obviously nowhere near as talented. Matt Milano has some of the same challenges. They are very fast. They are very aggressive. They're everything you want in your modern day NFL linebacker eventually, but they're both young. Matt Milano's in his second year. He didn't start until about game 10 last year. Tremaine Edmonds is a rookie. Julian Sanford's a backup. So bringing in those level of players, usually the things that have worked is a lot of play action, a lot of run fakes in one direction, throwing a screen back the other way, false keys, pulling a lineman one way, running counters the other way, and using the Bills' aggression against them. They are very aggressive, ball hawking, flow to the ball defense. If you get them moving the wrong way and then have weapons or athletes like a Tariq Cohen, like a Taylor Gabriel, you're able to maybe get them into space in that open area away from where the defense flowed, and you're able to pull off a couple big plays. The Bills also are fairly in that modern style where they have a lot of speed on defense, but not necessarily a ton of bulk. So in a couple of the games where the games got away from them, they've overall been really good in run support, but there has been a possibility to get the ball rolling when there is a lead, and having a hammer like Jordan Howard is a possibility that late in the game that could have some impact. So those are some of the things I would look at if I was the Bears offense and looking to key on what has been the lone strength of the Bills on their defensive side.
Jordan Howard going off, Greg, you are appealing to every core Bears fan's dream right now for a guy that doesn't have a 100-yard performance through 7 games. Watch your words carefully, Greg. Those are dangerous. Those are dangerous, appealing to those sensibilities.
And I'll say, I mean, the Colts came in with the same situation. Marlon Mack hadn't had a 100-yard game. Heck, he hadn't had a career 100-yard game yet. And I would say that's a similar situation where the teams probably aren't necessarily as far apart as what the 9.5, 10.5 point spread is, but that quarterback and the offensive lack of skill players is such a huge detriment that it forces people to make those kind of choices. And it's going to be very similar. In the Colts game, they got out to an early score with a couple fortunate bounces, and all of a sudden it kind of got away from them. They were able to milk the lead very much through the end of the game, versus a Patriots game who are clearly better than the Colts. But the Bills had some fortunate bounces. They had some good penalties their way. They had a couple things go their way. The defense was able to stay aggressive and, pushing against them, and they weren't able to get the ball rolling there. So I think very much early on, you're going to know, is this going to be a Jordan Howard game because you guys score first, you get maybe a 7 or 10 point lead, and then clearly the Bills have shown they're not going to be coming back against anyone, and you're going to be able to really hammer away and milk that lead. If it stays competitive and we see a low scoring, muddy, drag down into the muck kind of game through halftime into the second half, the Bills defense is strong enough that I don't think that you're just going to be able to impose your will and force Jordan Howard on the team. It's going to take that game script and circumstance to be able to get him going.
And that's kind of the thing with Jordan Howard too, where independent of this Bills game, you know immediately if he's going to go off. just based off of his first few carries. So that's an interesting juxtaposition that you bring up. Greg, I have a 27-14 final score that I'm going to be writing up in my game picks column on Friday. But I'm getting the sense that you think that's a little bit of an overestimation of the Bears offense and how this game's going to go. So give me your score and give me your reasoning, and let's not depress the entire audience.
I wish I had better news for you. It's going to be cold in Buffalo on Sunday. The Bills defense seems to be a little more fired up at home. I think they're coming off a promising game with the Patriots. I can't possibly think of a reason the Bills offense is all of a sudden going to show up. So I can't predict much points for the Bills, but I do think they can hold Trubisky and the offense in check relatively. I'm going to guess this is going to be a really ugly game early on, 2-3 field goals, and then maybe later on the talent gap eventually, shows through and they pull away and pull together, maybe a 16-6 win. I see 3 field goals and a late touchdown. And I think it could come out that way, where maybe we go into the fourth quarter 9-6 and the Bills feel like they're in the game, and, maybe a turnover sets them up. And then you see Howard punch that in, or you see if Allen Robinson plays, maybe he's able to make a play there. I don't sadly think this is going to be the most entertaining game, and Vegas doesn't disagree. It's the lowest point total I've seen all year. They're calling it at 37 for the over-under, which is crazy. So they're looking at, in this current modern NFL, any game that has the Bills, they really can't project them to score a lot more than 10 points. So sadly, that's about where they have it, and are looking, maybe they're calling it more 20-13, something like that. But I think it's very possible that the Bills drag the Bears down to their level and kind of make them out-muddy them for it.
Oh man, and you're just making me foresee another like ugly Bears Jets game where I'm now envisioning where the Bears and the Bills both struggling to get a red zone snap, 40 minutes in, the way it was last Sunday, and everybody dozing off in the press box, everybody dozing off in this. Well, it's probably not in the stands, but everyone dozing off in the press box, everyone dozing off on their couches. Just, oh hey, a first down. Oh hey, a completion. Oh hey, a 5-yard run. Just every positive offensive play will be treated as a celebration of the highest order. Why do you do this, Greg? Why do you do this?
I wish I had better news. I really do. I wish I was welcoming, this high flying offense coming to town, but that's just not what we bring today. That's not what the Bills are, and I'm hopeful that we see some of that in the future. But I do think that we're going to see really similar games to last week for both teams. I think that the Bills showed up against the Patriots, made it tough, made them work for every first down. I think that the Jets were in a similar spot with probably a stronger defense than their offense. They really weren't able to muster much, but they kept it close for a while. And then eventually, I think like I said, the Bears are a good year ahead of where the Bills are in their rebuild. And now the Bears have rebuilt and are now a competitive team pushing for the playoffs. And I think that eventually that talent gap's going to come through, but I think that the Bills can keep it muddy. I think that 10-point spread is about right. I wouldn't be shocked if they kept it close and probably made Bears fans a little anxious, but ultimately, I can't see this offense putting up enough unless Trubisky gives the Bills defense the ball directly, and we see a defensive score, we see a strip sack fumble that directly puts points on the board. I just don't see this offense being able to cash in and do much beyond that 6, 10, 13 point mark.
Greg, I appreciate you taking the time, man. Good stuff, great in-depth stuff. I also admire your optimistic realism. Somehow you strike that balance. I admire that. This rebuild, my friend, trust me, it will be over soon. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
That's what I'm hoping for, and I think that's what we preach a lot on the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Just looking at being able to, be realistic. I don't need to be a rose-colored glasses homer. I can call out, the bad parts, but I also think that it's easy, especially from a national media standpoint. It's easy to assume that the Bills have a historically bad offense. that must mean that the entire roster is garbage and that there's nothing redeemable going on there, and that this is obviously, just a terrible failure. And it's not. I think we have smart people in the front office. I think last year, the Bills showed that Sean McDermott is a legitimate coach. They did not have a playoff caliber roster, and he was able to coax that out of them to be able to get those tough, gritty wins. I think if we're able to now get through this year where we're eating a near record 57 million in dead cap space, I think if we can now get through that and then add that level of depth back, bring in some of those players and have reason to put that together going forward, there's legitimate reason for hope. This is the most painful part of that process, but there is reason for hope, and that's what we like to talk about. And I know that the Bears fans have gone through some challenging times, and you guys are a year or two ahead of where that is. But I think that's a model that we want to go after. I think we want to go find our Allen Robinson. We want to go trade for our Taylor Gabriel. We want to go bring in our Trey Burton. We want to be able to put weapons around our young quarterback and then find out if he's good. I think Dallas is a great example that if you waste that window of the rookie quarterback contract and give them middling talent around them to try to make sure, well, we're not sure if he's a franchise guy, all you're doing is ensuring that he's going to fail. Unless you put weapons around him to make sure he has a chance to succeed, that's your only chance to find out that it's real. And I hope that the Bills take note on what the Bears have done, because that's certainly what I want to see from our front office in the next 2 years.
The 4-3 Bears take on the 2-6 Bills this Sunday, looking to pad their lead in the NFC North with a crucial stretch coming up. He is Greg Tompsett. You can again follow him on Twitter at Greg Tompsett. That's TOMPSETT at Greg Tompsett. He's a host for Cover One's Buffalo podcast. They do great work there. Make sure to follow him. Make sure to check out their work on the Bills. And as I just noted, that optimistic realism as part of the Bills Mafia. You can follow us on Twitter at the Blitznet, and you can follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski. As always, everybody, stay classy.